The architects of Zeftar had built many things across their 3-million-year empire. Grand cities that floated between dimensions, weapons that could slice through the fabric of reality itself, computational matrices that could predict the movement of entire galactic clusters with perfect accuracy. But they had never built anything quite like the Labyrinth of Eternal Wandering. Commander Kexthul stood before the viewing portal, watching as the human test subject was lowered into the maze's central entry point. The creature was unremarkable by galactic standards. Bipedal, carbon-based, with that peculiar habit of baring its teeth when pleased. It wore simple clothing and carried nothing but a small water container. "Remind me again why we're testing this particular species," Kexthul said to his subordinate Velsara. "The humans have been problematic, Commander. Every prison we've designed, every containment protocol we've implemented, they find ways around them. The High Council believes this labyrinth will finally demonstrate our architectural superiority." Kexthul's 4 eyes focused on the human below. The creature, a male designation called Marcus Chen according to the files, was stretching casually, as if preparing for a pleasant morning walk rather than entry into the most sophisticated psychological maze ever constructed. "The labyrinth adapts," Velsara continued, reading brainwave patterns and reshaping itself to exploit the subject's deepest fears, regrets, and weaknesses. The walls shift based on neural feedback. The corridors extend or contract according to psychological pressure. Every species we've tested has been reduced to catatonic despair within 6 hours. The architect had tested 17 different species so far. The proud Veltani warriors had lasted the longest at 14 hours before their legendary discipline cracked. The hyper-intelligent Quoroth had been broken in 3 hours. Their vast intellects turned against them as the maze forced them to confront every logical contradiction in their philosophy. Marcus Chen took a sip from his water bottle and began walking. The maze immediately responded to his presence. Walls grew taller and darker, taking on the appearance of a cramped Earth subway tunnel. The architects had done their research. Humans, they learned, had a particular dread of enclosed spaces and urban decay. Marcus glanced at the grimy walls and nodded appreciatively. "Nice touch," he said to no one in particular. "Reminds me of the red line back home." He began to whistle. "What is that sound?" Kexthul demanded. "Acoustic analysis suggests it's a form of human recreational vocalization," Velsara replied, consulting his scanner. "The tune appears to be... Wait, that's impossible." "What?" "The melody is causing harmonic resonance with the maze's neural interface. The labyrinth is designed to respond to psychological input, but it's not equipped to process whatever this is." Below, Marcus had reached the first major decision point. The maze offered him 3 paths, one leading to a recreation of his childhood home during his parents' bitter divorce, another to a scenario where he'd failed to save a drowning child, and the third to a future where Earth lay in radioactive ruins due to his inaction. Marcus examined each corridor with the casual interest of a tourist choosing between museum exhibits. He selected the one showing his childhood trauma and strolled in, still whistling what sounded suspiciously like an ancient Earth tune called "Don't Stop Me Now." "The psychological pressure readings are anomalous," Velsara reported. "Instead of rising, they're actually decreasing." In the maze, young Marcus was watching his parents scream at each other while lawyers divided up his life into weekends and custody arrangements. Adult Marcus watched the scene unfold, his whistling never faltering. "Yeah, that sucked," he said conversationally to the phantom figures. "But you know what? I learned from it. I know what not to do when I have kids someday." He patted the ghostly child version of himself on the shoulder. "We turned out okay, buddy. Trust me." The corridor flickered uncertainly. The maze was designed to trap subjects in cycles of guilt, fear, and regret. It had no protocols for dealing with someone who acknowledged their trauma, processed it, and moved on. Marcus continued walking, his casual whistling echoing off the increasingly confused walls. Hour after hour, the labyrinth threw its worst at him. It recreated his greatest failures, his deepest fears, his most shameful moments. Each time, Marcus would pause, consider the scenario with the thoughtfulness of someone reviewing an old photo album, make peace with whatever he saw, and continue on his way. "That's not how this works," Kexthol muttered, all four eyes fixed on the human. "The maze feeds on psychological energy. It grows stronger as the subject grows weaker, but this human he's actually enjoying himself." Indeed, Marcus had begun treating the experience like a walking tour of his own psyche. When the maze showed him his ex-wife leaving him, he wished the phantom version of her well and hoped she was happy. When it displayed his failures in school, he chuckled and mentioned how those mistakes had led him to his actual calling. When it conjured his deepest fear, being forgotten and unloved, he simply shrugged and said, "Well, I know I love me, and that's a start." The maze began to break down. Walls that had shifted with malevolent purpose now wavered uncertainly. Corridors, designed to extend infinitely, started to contract. The labyrinth's central intelligence, built to exploit weakness and despair, found itself trying to process an entirely alien concept. A being who had made peace with his own imperfection. After exactly 7 hours and 43 minutes, Marcus Chen walked out of the labyrinth of eternal wandering. He was still whistling. "Excuse me," he called up to the viewing gallery, waving cheerfully at the stunned architects. "Thanks for that. It was like therapy, but free. Really helped me work through some stuff. Oh, and I think your maze might need a reboot. It seemed pretty confused there at the end." He took another sip from his water bottle and looked around, expectantly. "So, is there a shuttle back to Earth, or should I call an Uber?" Kexthul stared at the human for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to understand something that the architect's 3-million-year empire had never quite grasped. Sometimes the most sophisticated trap in the universe was no match for a being who had learned to be okay with being imperfect. The human walked away, still whistling, leaving behind a labyrinth that would never again be quite sure how to break anyone. After all, how do you trap someone who's already found their way out of their own head?